Hey guys, Misschief here coming to you with my first book review. I struggled a little bit about what book I wanted to talk about first. I've read a lot of good books over the past several months. A lot of new releases, a lot of things that I'm just discovering that, I'm kind of behind with, but trying to catch up on. The book that I'm going to talk about is, I have never heard of this author before I read this book. I follow a lot of book blogs and book review sites on Facebook and Twitter, and I just so happened one day to come across this author before this book came out. This book came out around the time of 4th of July. And I love this author. Her writing style is amazing. This is the only book that I have read by her so far. I purchased one of the newer books that she's put out, but I've not got around to reading it yet. But this book is just excellent. I love it so much. This book is called The Vixen and the Vet by Katy Regnery. This is the newer cover art that she just had released a couple of days ago. This is not the original cover that was with the book when I purchased it on the Kindle. She had the cover redone because apparently some people were complaining in reviews about the way that the original cover looked, and even a couple people didn't even like the name of the book. I personally myself didn't have a problem with either one of them, but she's the author, she knows what's best. The new cover does really look good, but I like the original cover as well, but it doesn't affect the story. So this story is about a girl named Savannah Carmichael, who is 24 years old, and a guy named Asher Lee, who is 34. One of the things that I loved most about this story is how easily I could relate to it based upon where they lived. This book takes place in a little small town in Virginia. So, I could easily relate to that because I am originally from a little small town in West Virginia, which is basically a hop, skip, and a jump over the mountain to Virginia. I can relate to these characters in terms of how they talk, how they think, the location, what this town would look like. Little small towns, everybody knows everybody knows everybody's business. Nobody likes something different. They don't like things that they cannot understand. And that is what this book is about, is Asher is an anomaly to these people. Like, they cannot wrap their head around what he is. And I'll tell you about that in a little bit. So Savannah has just moved back to Virginia from New York. She had moved to New York after she graduated high school. She attended New York University and majored in journalism. After she graduated, she eventually got a job working at a major newspaper in New York called the New York Sentinel. She did investigative journalism, and she was working on a story. She eventually pretty much fell in love with her source for this story. They had a little bit of an affair. He ended up screwing her over, which resulted in her getting fired. So after she got fired, she tucked tail and ran back home. So when the story starts, you meet Savannah. She's sitting on the front porch of her parents' house, talking to her little sister, Scarlett. Scarlett's getting married at the end of the summer, so as Savannah's sitting there, Scarlett is reading an article in a magazine talking about 12 ways to know that you're meant to be together, or something along those lines. And that article actually plays out throughout the story in terms of where Asher and Savannah's relationship goes. So, as Savannah is, sitting here listening to her sister go on and on about this, because Scarlett is pretty much a big time romantic, love at first sight kind of person, and Savannah's not. Savannah just doesn't really care. And so eventually Savannah gets a call from another journalist that she had met, I believe it was the previous year, at a conference. Of course, this lady has heard about, Savannah getting fired and what happened, and She's trying to help her out and tells her that the newspaper that she works for in Phoenix, Arizona is looking for someone to head their lifestyle section in their paper. Lifestyles is not really something that Savannah wants to do, but she's willing to take a chance on it because she knows that it is a way to get her foot back in the door and eventually move herself back up in the journalism world. So she's like, okay, what do I have to do? So basically what she has to do is she has to write a story in time for the 4th of July, basically like an all-American hero story, submit it to the editor, and if he likes it, you know, they'll run it and she'll get a job. So she immediately thinks of Asher Lee, and Asher is known as the town hermit. People tell ghost stories about him, and you know, they whisper and talk about him all the time. Asher is a war veteran. He came back from Afghanistan, and when he came back, the whole town pretty much shunned him and had nothing to do with him. So for the last 7 years, he's basically locked himself up in his house and he's not left. The thing with Asher is Asher lost his parents, so he doesn't have anybody. He's an only child. He doesn't have his parents. His parents died in a plane crash. So when he graduated from high school, he went on to college and he wanted to become a doctor. He eventually got accepted into medical school, but for one reason or another, he ended up joining the Army. He was a medic in the Army because, of course, he had medical training, because I think that he may have went to pre-med school, or he may have went to a little bit of med school. I honestly can't remember, but he had medical training. So he went into the Army, he became a medic. So one day they were out in the field, there was an injured soldier, he and another soldier went out to try to save this guy. As Asher and this other guy are walking, an IED goes off, which immediately throws the other guy beside of Asher and kills him. Asher survives, but he pretty much wishes that he didn't, because Asher gets jacked up. His whole entire right side of his body is just, it's toast. The right side of his face is all scarred and messed up. His right eye droops, because I think that the eye socket got messed up, but he didn't lose his vision. He lost his right ear. He lost his right arm from the elbow down, and he has a limp in his left leg. So the entire right side of his body just looks like something out of Terminator or something. I mean, he's jacked up. The left side of his body is perfectly fine. And for the most part, Asher is a good-looking guy. He was a good-looking guy before he got injured. So, you know, he's got a nice-looking body as far as, you know, his left side. And his, you know, when he doesn't have a shirt on, he looks like a god. But, this is one of the stories that, you know, this story goes to show you that not every man in the world has to look like a god in order for him to be attractive. There is more to a person than just their physical outward appearance, in my opinion. A personality goes a long way. Some of the best looking people physically in the world can be complete douchebags and ugly because of their personality. Asher has a wonderful personality. He is a wonderful person. So eventually Savannah goes to Asher's house, and Miss Potts, which I love, Miss Potts is hilarious. Miss Potts is Asher's housekeeper, and she is the one who looked after him after his parents died. She was a very good friend of his grandmother. So she is pretty much like his own grandmother, or crazy aunt, or whatever you want to call her. She's hilarious. She has some of the best lines in the book. She made me laugh probably more than anybody else did. She's a feisty little old lady. So she answers the door, and Savannah pretty much tells her why she's there, that she wants to interview him for a newspaper article, and Miss Potts pretty much tells her, nope, it's not going to happen. He doesn't talk to anybody. Because when Asher came back from Afghanistan, the entire town you know, people that knew his family, people that knew his parents, people that he grew up with, that he went to school with, they shunned him. They turned their back on him and wanted nothing to do with him because of the way that he looked. They call him a monster. They call him a cripple. They call him the town hermit. You know, they want nothing to do with him because they don't like the way that he looks, so therefore they don't think that he fits into their town. So, you know, for the last 7 years since he came back home, he has not talked to anybody. He has not went back into town. He's not left his house. Well, Savannah leaves her card with Miss Potts, along with some brownies. Asher, he thinks about it because when she comes to his house, he gets a glimpse of her from the top of the stairs, and he's immediately enamored with her because he thinks that she's like the most beautiful thing that he's ever seen in his entire life. And this is a guy who has not, he's not been around a woman in at least 10 years. Because I think he was in the army for about 3 years before he got injured. So he's not been around a woman in 10 years. And, you know, he's a little hesitant at first, but then he finally calls her and tells her that he will do the interview. Because he wants people to know what he went through. So that's pretty much where the story goes. They start hanging out a couple days a week, talking, and you know, they end up developing feelings for each other, and it's a great love story, and it eventually goes all to hell. Something happens, and it just, you know, every great love story, all of these big popular books, something happens. There's always drama, and there's drama, you know, plenty of drama to be had in this book. And this book is just, it's an excellent book. The writing is excellent. These characters are just, I love them so much. Asher is definitely one of my top book boyfriends. I love him so much. He's a great guy. He's wonderful. I wanted to climb into my Kindle and strangle Savannah several times during this book. But, you know, it all works out, as they always do. But this is a great book. It's a standalone right now. Katy Regnery had said on Facebook a couple days ago that some people want more, myself included. I definitely want, you know, at least a novella to tie up the end of this book. So I think that she's going to write a novella, but I don't know when it's going to come out because she's working on some other stuff right now. But I highly recommend that you read this book if you haven't already read it. Because there's so much that goes on in this book. It's amazing. But I definitely highly recommend that you read this book. You will not be disappointed.